My name is Paul Lincoln, and I'm your host for Soil Matters, a podcast from the British Society of Soil Science, the professional body for soil scientists in the UK. Welcome to our sixth episode. Soil Matters is a podcast which connects scientific research with practical application. In the first of two special episodes of Soil Matters, we explore important topics across the continents of Africa and the Americas. This time, we will be talking about old knowledge. We will be drawing on centuries of lived experience and the deep cultural connections to the land, to Indigenous communities, which have developed ways of caring for soil that promote resilience, biodiversity, and long-term fertility. There is a lot that we can learn from this experience, and over the two episodes, we will look at how these approaches complement modern soil science, how they offer lessons in stewardship, and also how, most importantly, they offer respect for natural systems, very relevant today. Our first episode focuses on Africa and includes the work that the Climate Smart Agricultural Youth Network conducts with Indigenous communities, in which they connect science with on-the-ground practice and engagement with policymakers on a truly global scale. Our first guest today is Ntiokam. Divine is the founder and executive director of the Climate Smart Agricultural Youth Network. Divine has many years of experience in youth entrepreneurship, advocacy, and in the mobilization of young people interested in agriculture. In May 2014, he established the network, which is now operational in 30 countries across Africa, Asia, and the USA. Divine, very warm welcome to the podcast. Let me start off by saying to you, what inspired you to set up the Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network?
Thank you very much indeed, Paul, for this opportunity. We are in 178 countries, not 30 countries. We are in 178 countries. So basically, what prompted me or what inspired me to set up the network was some of my practices or, my past experiences working with the UNICEF on the UNICEF project titled the UNICEF Raw Voice of Youth, where young people were actually, and young children were at the center of this project. The idea was to develop a consultation handbook to inform UNICEF country offices on some of the challenges young people had in the most marginalized communities. So after that, I said to myself, okay, having this knowledge, how do I make sure that, I keep it somehow sustainable across the entire system? That's why I set up this network where I could actually give an opportunity for young people to voice out, to come and join, the systematic solution as far as changing climate is concerned. And we're looking at climate smart agriculture because 2012, young people were not interested in agriculture. They said it's for old people. So that's why we really thought that was very important to come up with a framework where young people could fully involve in the process. So that was one of my motivations.
And tell us about the extent, if at all, soil health featured in your very initial vision.
Yeah, of course. We can't talk about agriculture, we can't talk about food system transformation without looking at the health of the soils. So, and I really believe that many years soil health has not been, an epical discussion at the topic where people were so focusing on. But this time around, I'm glad that over time, we've been able to understand that soil, without a healthy soil, we cannot have good productivity. Without a healthy soil, we cannot have even good constructions for the poultry farm. So soil is very important. So I think anything we're going to be doing and anything with actually streamlined that should be studying and looking into is about how do we understand the various type of soils and when and how do we actually plant the crops. Because when we talk of fertilizers will not grow in the air, it's actually in soil. So if the soils are not somehow are not healthy and really accommodating, nothing's going to happen. Yeah, so I think soil health is very important, and soil science is very, very important because the science of soil is going to actually give us, an idea on what needs to be done for the crops to grow in a much more sustainable manner. Improving productivity. Because at the end of the day, we talk of food system transformation. How do we value addition? So if the soil is not at the front line, of what we're going to do center stage, then nothing going to happen.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about what type of young professionals and what type of soil-focused practitioners are part of the network.
Yeah, of course. You made mention initially about indigenous people. I mean, the custodians of the soil are indigenous people. They're not ministers, they're not head of states, they're indigenous people because they live there 24/7, January to December. That right there. So we decided to come up with a framework where we could actually build the capacity on young people on how to domesticate the ideas of policymaker into the communities. And that's why for us, looking at the soil science as one of the most important components, we are looking forward to establish soil science clubs because we have environmental clubs. So now we're looking forward to establish soil science clubs as well within the CSOIN framework. And that's going to help us to inform indigenous people that they have a space to share their views and their plight and what they want to see happen in the next decade or so, depending on how they define the status quo.
And tell us what, for you, would you say is the main link between soil science and day-to-day practice?
Yeah, of course. There's nothing we can do without science. All the scientific evidence actually informs the future, the present and the future. What happens today, when I take an example perhaps of changing climate, which we're very good at, look at climate smart approaches are actually being informed by the science. And this is actually that's where the engineer's knowledge can never be replaced by modern knowledge, as we call it. So I think that science, climate information services, all of that actually helps to actually make sure that we know better what the future generations can be looking at and what we can prioritize.
And in your view, what particular value does the network bring to advancing soil science?
Yeah, of course. We have the capacity, we have the outreach. As I said, we are in 170 countries and we work with over 88 institutions of learning, primary school, high schools, TVETs, and universities. We all know that there's nobody who doesn't go to spot a subject 30 age. So what happens is that we activate the niche of academia to foster soil science. So we are coming with a very, very strong voice to say, okay, soil science, just like environmental science, have to be the applied talks of all the time and all the time and all the day. And we are ready as CSAYN to foster this initiative across board.
And tell us a bit about the way that the work within the network connects to and supports some of the broader work that the United Nations does around soil health, food security, and indeed climate resilience.
Yeah, of course. I equally want to echo here that I was actually one of the food system champions appointed by Secretary General to work for 18 months in shaping the UN Food System Summit in 2021, where it was being spearheaded by Dr. Awdenegest Moges as a special envoy to this process. I mean, working that process gave me the opportunity to connect with a lot of policymakers. And of course, right now, the people I connect with are some of the people I met in the past. So meaning that the sphere of speaking here at the General Assembly here in New York all the time actually gives some sort of like an outreach and building my social capital on how I can actually share the knowledge, bring the discussions down from Cameroon, maybe from Tanzania, from Togo, from Nigeria, even from the UK, right here, right down at the front line here at the United Nations during the General Assembly. So it is very, very important because we play an important role. Reason being that we're equally operated to most of the UN conventions, it gives us a voice to actually contribute some of the discussions at the high level.
And as a youth network, which has been very involved with the different United Nations COPs, tell us what kind of role do you play in shaping soil-related policy discussions?
Yeah, as maybe I forgot I have to echo this. I'm equally I'm one of the international ambassadors for the Food and Land Use Coalition, which is actually, we're looking at land degradation, looking at reforestation. So, the domain of land policy, soil science is actually at the front line of what we're doing. And that's why we can't talk about agriculture food system without talking about the soil. And we're looking at much more how can use more technology to even protect the soil than destroying it with some unwanted fertilizers, So that's why I really feel that this podcast is very, very important. I can't stand it because when I look at some of the decade of action within the UN processes, there's a lot that needs to be done, and we are here to articulate this voice.
This podcast is very much around working with Indigenous communities, and your network works a lot with and from Indigenous communities. Tell us a bit about what that collaboration has looked like in terms of soil health and general land management and land stewardship.
Yeah, of course. As I said early on before this, I made mention that those who own the soil, the custodian of the soil, are Indigenous people, traditional rulers, because they're right there in the communities. They know what the weather is going to be in the next few minutes with this community because they're used to that. So one of the things we've been able to do, we're having traditional rulers to be part of our board, because so that their voices can be heard. It's a win-win situation. It's not CSO deciding what the Indigenous people are going to do. They actually have their voices. They have the seats at the table. They are not on the menu, but at the table, which means that their decision actually counts. Their voices be heard. And that's why we actually move right down to the community. We'll bring internship to proximity, and exchange programs. So we are looking forward, as I said earlier on, to reinforcing some of our programs by fostering soil health, soil science, and agriculture and food system nexus right down the communities.
What have you learned most from Indigenous approaches to land management, do you think?
For me, as I said, we can't talk about a future without looking at the present or the past, because it's the past that actually informs us of the future. So I think the knowledge that has always been there and that was there before me, before I was born, is always going to be relevant, because that's like, I call it a data system. I can do nothing without data, because what happened before actually informs us on how to manage the soil systems, how to manage the food systems, how to manage land to be able to have better production, better feeding and better nutrition. So I think it is very, very important that we articulate and underscore the fact that indigenous knowledge actually to continuously be impactful, no matter which decade we find ourselves, because that knowledge actually gives us a foresight of what we want to see in future. Is very, very important, because some of the challenges the indigenous people face, for example, is language. And that's why also at the level of CSAYN, we make sure that we translate the information to indigenous, to the youth-friendly informations. And that's why I took upon ourselves at CSAYN to translate the SDGs to local languages so that they could equally be involved in the entire process. Because the slogan of the SDGs, Agenda 26 Territory for Sustainable Development, is leaving no one behind. So we did all of that to make sure that nobody's left behind. The visually impaired persons, the persons with disabilities, and of course, the indigenous people.
The network's been in existence for more than 10 years. Let me just ask you one of my last questions. 10 years from now, if you can look to the future, 10 years from now, where would you like to be with the network? What do you think the network will be doing 10 years from now?
The network will be a game changer across the globe. The network is going to move from CSAYN Centers of Excellence to CSAYN schools. Coming January, that terminology is changing, because right now we have exchange programs, we have internship programs, we have mentorship program that's working with skill sets. We actually feel that that's a life-changing initiative, and that's why we should keep on doing the same things and better and adding more value to what we're doing. And of course, when I look at BSS as the British Society of Soil Science, what they have been able to do so far with us, it's been a lot. So I really feel that with a continuous collaboration, with the next 10 years, we're going to be very far, very, very far. I'm looking at having a very tall building in New York, written there, CSAYN his headquarters.
Of course.
Where, yeah. So those are some of the things I want to see. Go to London, or Manchester. So that's the plan. I don't want to see a situation where, I want to see a green and white color flag everywhere, because that's our color and that's our logo. So I really see that happening very, very soon. So for me, I look forward to having the most beautiful space of my life 10 years to come with CSAYN.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to welcoming you to London, or maybe seeing you in New York. But either, thank you very much for your time. It's been a great pleasure talking to you this evening. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Our second guest today is Jemimah Kutata, a disability rights advocate and leader who has demonstrated outstanding leadership in both diversity and inclusion. Born and raised as an Indigenous and marginalist Maasai community in Kenya, she broke historic barriers as the first woman with a disability to challenge female genital mutilation, child marriage, and the exclusion of girls from education within her community. Passionate about creating awareness and building the capacity of women, young people, and people with disabilities, Jemimah champions economic empowerment as a pathway to breaking poverty barriers and nurturing hidden talents. Jemimah, welcome to the podcast. To start off with, tell us a little bit about your background and about the work that you're currently doing in your community.
Thank you so much, Paul, for having me in this podcast. As you have already gone ahead and introduced me, my name is Jemimah Kutata, an advocate of disability rights and inclusion. I come from a very humble background of Indigenous community of Maasai people. And as I'm speaking here, I'm a woman with disability, walking with the aid of 2 elbow crutches and a brace, or rather, some people call it caliper, on my right leg. I am a village girl. I was brought up in a Manyata, that is a Maasai village, and Maasais are pastoralists. They move from one place to another for search of greener pastures. So, as a girl with disability and also coming from an Indigenous community, was a triple tragedy because remember, in this community, a girl child was not educated. And also in this community, there was a cultural practice of genital mutilation. It was really a challenge because when other children were going to school, a girl child was not given an opportunity. Being a girl child was able, or rather me who had challenged, we were not given an opportunity. And when girls were going to do the normal chores like collecting firewood, fetching water, and even some girls went and with women looking after the kettle, I was left behind at home. Sometimes I used to look after the children because I could not move. And because of that, I had something in me that I should be like other people. And that is what pushed me. Like when my brother used to go to school, because men are given an opportunity to go to school. When they go to school during the day, when they come back in the evening, I was so curious asking my brother, what did you learn? How was it? How many kilometers are these that I cannot go to school? Something of the sort. And because of the passion, I had to get also education. I used to use my brother's book to write on the sand and to write on the ground. And you can imagine that muddy place when you write down. Sometimes when the wind comes, everything is blown. And because of that, one thing I thank God for, I was always hopeful. And I never looked down at myself at one point and said, why did this happen to me? I always lived with a hope. And one day, an officer from the World Vision, because I'll never forget, passed by. They were looking for these children who are not going to school. And also there was another officer from it used to be called Christian Children Fund. Yeah, from Austria. They were going around homes and they found me and they were like, how comes this girl can't walk? She cannot do, but she's so intelligent. And through that, they called my mommy and I told her she can do something also when given an opportunity. And she really encouraged my mom to take me to school, even if it's a boarding school. And that's how I ended up going to a boarding school at a very early stage of 10 years, of which I was already late of starting school. And you can imagine me in a very far away boarding school. I am a small girl, schooling with big girls. I have disability in a community of girls like 1,000, and I'm the only one with disability. The students treated me like a baby because everybody was helping me, like carry the water, make sure that I've taken shower. When it's food time, I needed somebody to help me even carry my food. And because of that, my heart was always like, yes, I'm in school. What about those who are not going to school? And that really disturbed me. And I took time about it. And later on is when now I started like having that zeal of even in school talking about persons with disability a little bit, and also when I go for vacation, because the FGM or other genital mutilation practices were done during holidays, I was very active, opening my ears and my eyes to know which village is practicing the female genital mutilation, and I could always rescue girls, and our home was a rescuing home. And through that, the village women and men really hated me because they were saying, this girl went to school and now she's violating our culture. But I really helped girls with disabilities who could not run away for their lives. And life in Africa is so different, and especially for a girl child with disability, because one, I was staying in a village, living in a cow dung house. This house does not have a light like electricity. It's dark. We used to use like clothes, and then you put in a tin, you put kerosene and then you light it. I don't know whether you have had such a thing. That was what we were calling lighting. And then our Maasai houses didn't even have windows. It had a very small hall, which just brings just a little bit of ventilation. And because of that, during the rainy season, it was very tough because in Maasai community, it's the women who make houses. So when it rains, women goes up there on top of the house and start smearing the cow dung. And now for me, I couldn't go up there on top of the house, but I thank God my mom was always there to do it so that I'm not rained on. And that is my background. And life at school was not also easy because the officers just started me off, but they never paid for me fully school fees. So I was on and off the school. When I get the school fees, I go to school. When I didn't have it, I stay at home. And through the well wishers and also my mom's and my dad's support, I was able to finish Form 4, which was not easy. It took time because even where the classes were and where the dormitories were was very far. So most of the time I was doing my studies in the dormitory. And after school, the life was not easy as usual because getting a job is a challenge. And I realized that many women with disabilities and girls were not going to school. And it pushed me because I remembered the pain that I went through. And I turned the pain to passion and purpose. And that's how now my life started.
Thank you. And tell me how you started working, because clearly you had a very complicated, challenging beginning, but you chose to work very specifically with women and often with women with disabilities. So explain how you became involved in that particular aspect of your work.
My work began with recognition. With the recognition that women from indigenous communities face a lot of challenges, and they were not given an opportunity. And because they face multiple barriers, my heart was like, how can we get out of this? How can I be of help to these people? yes, I may not have money, but if I save a girl from genital mutilation, to me it's a plus. To me, it was an impact, and because of that, and women with disabilities were were particularly left behind, excluded even from the women focused programs. Women with disability were left out. So women with disability were falling in the crack of women in the mainstream, and also there was a gap between women and men, because women with the disability, when it comes to leadership in the disability movement, men were taking lead, so they were left out. When it went to women who are able-bodied, they never wanted to involve women with disabilities, and because of that, I realized that they were excluded even from the women-focused led programs, and because of that, in communities like the Maasai, Borana, and Somali, um, which are pastoralists, women mostly were left out. No one was thinking of a woman. And also, women were not given the position to make decision. Women were classified like children. So if a man comes to home and say, this is the way to go, they don't come like to women or rather to children to ask something. It's only the men who are making decision. And because of that, women, both and without disability, often lacked access to land. They also lacked a decision-making platform because nobody was involving them uh, in decision-making. And also there was that lack of education because they were never given an opportunity. A girl child was to get married when they reach like 14 to 15 years. And they were married off by old men in exchange of cows and goats and sheep. So when a man had many girls, he was considered to be a very rich man because this man will marry off these girls and they will get a lot of animals in exchange. Because of that, many people are not getting opportunity. I started I started by creating inclusive spaces where all women could participate in the community, and also where women were given an opportunity to speak out, to share out what they would want to do, because as much as they have not gone to school, they know how to take care of their children, they know how to take care of the animals. So I started putting them in the center of like, we can listen to them, giving them a platform where they can speak and we listen, where they can echo their pain, where they can speak out, and we do as per their talks. And because of that, we started also climate adaptation because Maasais were depending only on pastoralists. So we started changing, advocating for change in their minds so that they can be able to know they can do subsistence farming, so that when the livestock or rather their animals dies, they can still have food on their table.
Let me ask you then about the type of farming. Have you observed a change in the procedures that people use?
Yeah, absolutely true, because when the Maasais were only depending on their animals, that is cows, goat, and sheep, which is their major wealth, or rather something they depend on. During the drought, or rather the floods, when all these animals died because of a calamity, then there was like poverty, total poverty in that area, because once the animals are swept away by floods or other major drought, there will be no food in that place.
What alternatives are there if people face drought? What other choices do they have in terms of food production?
Currently, we dug boreholes. We got people who came and dug boreholes like Rotarian. They came, and now after getting water, Maasai now are planting napier grass.
So creating new forms of water supply by digging boreholes, and that then has an impact on the type of farming. So let me ask you, this is very topical because COP30 took place in Brazil, obviously only a few weeks ago. Say a word about the way in which you're thinking about climate justice currently links with access for people with disabilities.
Climate justice, I can say, when it comes to climate change, persons with disability are severely affected.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, there is no quick response mechanism when it comes to persons with disabilities. And most of the time when the rains comes, most of the persons with disabilities, there is no plan for evacuation. So by the time people think of them, majority of them have died or rather suffered a lot. And also, I can speak of a real life experience of last year when it rained in Coast region, and one of the largest center in Africa called Bombolulu Workshop, when it flooded. Some of our persons with disability lost their assistive devices. And because of that, you wake up in the morning, you can't move again, you're grounded, you don't have a wheelchair, you don't have your crutches, you don't have your brace. So when it comes to climate, it limits persons with disabilities and also it affects them. Although we have been in the forefront also of mitigating the issues of climate change, like currently women with disabilities, boys and girls, and even men, they are planting mangroves in coastal region so that we can be able to prevent also flooding. And also the mangroves helps us to get fish in coast region. And also planting mangroves, we are planting because mangroves normally attract bees. And
Okay.
yes, and now when these bees come, it will produce the honey, and the women and persons with disability and even the community will be able to harvest the honey, and that will be a livelihood for them.
You've touched on some very interesting thoughts on soil conservation. Tell us a bit about the way in which you're working to support both soil conservation and sustainable land use.
On the soil conservation, I can say communities. Many communities are practicing rational grazing, integrational grazing in their communities. And also, currently we are using composting manure. Many people are using animals manure because people are going organic. People are tired of fertilizers. And, in Africa, people believes that the chemicals that they have been using have been causing unknown diseases. So most people are focusing on natural foods. We are focusing on using our own manure from our animals, and also we have like people are learning from one another. Like now, people from one region goes to another region to learn about their soil, because you find that, like in coast region, what grows in coast region, we can have in coast region we have things like coconut, cashew nut, which when you go to up country you cannot get them, because in up country you find that people grow things like maize, beans, and potatoes. So communities are practicing um, rotational also grazing, and also composting and making a manure for themselves.
Let's move on to the topic of soil health. How central is soil health to the work that you do with communities? And particularly the issue of soil health, how to keep soil healthy and how to make sure that soil doesn't get degraded. How central is that to your work?
It's an indigenous community that has been a pastoralist for a very long time. We are trying to integrate with those people who have been farming for a long time, and also involving the Ministry of Agriculture, and also training parents or other people on the soil test as a pilot thing that we are doing. We help them like soil test in pilot areas that shows increased organic organic matters, and natural levels of soil have really changed, and also supporting better grass growth for the livestock. As I talked earlier, currently the Maasai are growing napier grass and other grass. They harvest it, keep it for the rainy or other drought season, so that their animals don't stay without the grass. And also, I can say, in a small scale, we have nowadays kitchen gardens where people are producing higher yields due to the enriched soil. The soil has been enriched because people now knows the advantage of the animal. When you keep the animals, instead of throwing away the animal waste, you take it to the shamba, you protect the shamba, and after growing in the shamba and doing the rotational of crops, you find that the soil is healthy. And also, I can say for the Maasai, they are really, and Borana, Rendile, all those pastoralists, they are really working on coming together as indigenous movement. We have different groups of indigenous people, and like last week, we were having sustainable development goal meeting, and I met a lot of indigenous people from different parts of the country. And through that, we have created a movement of indigenous women. Now we are learning from one another. When they come to coast, they learn what we are doing, and also we learn what they are doing.
What's the proportion of agriculture in Kenya would you say is led by indigenous groups? Are you able to give me a guess of what percentage it might be?
Basically, I can say nowadays they are really doing it. I can say you can say 5%.
Okay, and are you optimistic that number will get bigger?
I'm optimistic because of the way currently indigenous communities innovative and steward of the land, and also their leaders in the climate change as indigenous people, and as people who have really suffered for a long time. This is like a awakening call for them. They have learned that they can do something else who can generate income, and they are very active about it. And also their combination of knowledge, collective agreements, and also willingness to adapt the current climate smart agriculture innovations which are going on. For a good example, in Kenya, we have a program called Shamba Shape Up. And Shamba Shape Up is a program that you just write a message on your phone, and then from there they start communicating with you about the soil. You do the soil testing, and they guide you on how to do. So because of this collaboration and also partnership, it has really helped us to come together, and also it's pushing us to have a more movement when it comes to agriculture.
Tell me, that sounds so interesting. Tell me how it works in detail with your phone. How does the whole system work?
The smart agriculture, we bring like women or other youth together. And then when they come together, we bring an officer from the agriculture department. And then they are taught on how to grow like spinach or kale on a sack, because you find that like indigenous in Mombasa, there is no much land. So you utilize the small space you have. Even if it's outside your house, you can have a small kitchen garden there. So we grow on the sacks whereby you start by putting stones from on the bottom of the sack, and then you put the stones again, and then you go into layers, and then now you put the soil all over. And the soil that we use is the loam soil. We use the loam soil in Mombasa to do that. And because of that, we now start planting. And one sack can really give you enough even to eat and also to sell. So what normally happen with these women, we divide ourselves in a way that every day there is one of you who will go to water in the morning, and another one, and also you water in the evening. So if it's your duty, it's up to you to make sure you go and water. And then another thing, we divide ourselves among the groups. If 3 women are doing spinach, 3 women are doing tomato, and 3 women are doing cabbages, 3 women are doing the green pepper, and 3 women are doing another type of veggies. So because of that, when these shamba, or rather these sacks grow, you will find in a very small compound, but we have plenty of food. And now when it comes to harvesting, we make sure each household represented start buying from that place to make an income. And that has really worked. And through the capacity building from an organization called Oxfam, it has enabled women to come together, and they are being trained also. And also, apart from the small smart agriculture, we are empowering women on making like home-based soaps to enable them now to make something which can also generate an income. And also everything that we do with the mindset of not destroying the environment. We are very keen on the environment. We don't use plastic bottles. We don't use anything to do with the plastic. So we make sure we conserve our environment. And also we are really growing tree, because as a country there is that movement of making Kenya green.
Fabulous. And let me ask you, in terms of changes that you've been able to witness because of this work, what changes have you seen in soil fertility, improved water retention, and agricultural productivity generally? Have you been able to witness really significant changes since you've been doing this work?
I've seen the change, because I've seen indigenous communities suffering, not knowing they have a gold. The land, the soil is the gold, that they never knew that they had a gold. But since we started training them on testing of the soil, coming up together and producing food that they see they can have food on the table, they can use the same food to generate an income. It has really brought a mindset, or rather a shift of mindset. And people are keen protecting their soil by creating even trenches to avoid soil erosion, or rather soil degradation. And because of that, because of the biodiversity, people are even growing some plants like napier grass, so that they can be able to prevent the soil erosion. And also we are doing a lot of water harvesting. There are those, I don't know whether you have seen those big dams where they dig like they dig bigger places, and then they cement it. When it rains, the water comes there. And also the indigenous communities have started practicing the greenhouse. The soil has been gold to us.
Well, you've answered my final question, but I will ask it because I was going to ask you about optimism, and you've already said very beautifully that the soil is the gold. But my question is, what gives you the most optimism about the role that Indigenous communities can play in farming?
Indigenous communities, innovators, steward of the land, and also leaders in climate resilience. That is why I'm very optimistic, because I can see the reality and the change and the impact that changing of the mindset has brought to the indigenous communities. And also their contribution of knowledge, collective governance, and willingness to adapt means they can lead to transformation of Kenya's agriculture into a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient systems. Because now we are collaborating, we are coming up together. And when I talk we are coming together, I mean indigenous people from Turkana, indigenous people from like Kajiado, indigenous people from Rift Valley coming together and learning with one another, and also sharing lived experiences of how they started, how they are doing it. Because I realize also in some part of Rift Valley, people are producing small insects. They're producing insects which they are being used like fertilizers. So everyone is coming with their lived experiences and bringing it to the bigger indigenous communities, which is really making change. And also there is that adaptation of sustainable and inclusive of resilient systems. So I can say, as we are coming together, we are creating even more systems and also mechanism that will be able to help the younger generation who are coming, because they are going to learn of what is happening, and also they bring in the technology, because the Generation Z is not working the way we have been working. And because we are bringing the concept of technology, the smart agriculture is really, really helping communities and also changing the mind of people and knowing that richness is not on education, richness is on the soil.
What a perfect way of concluding our conversation. Jemimah, huge thanks. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much also for having me. And inclusion counts for all. And let's not leave no one behind as we fulfill the sustainable development goal. As we think of the soil, we think the soil is the gold of each one of us. Let us prevent soil erosion. Let us protect our soil because it's our health. Wealth. Thank you.
Our third guest today is Dr Awdenegest Moges. Awdenegest currently works in the Department of Agricultural Engineering at Hawassa University. Awdenegest does research in soil conservation and watershed management. Current projects are local-level land degradation assessment towards sustainable land management for improved livelihood in the Ethiopian Rift Valley, together with cataloguing and rating of opportunities for sideline species in the restoration of agriculturally degraded soils in sub-Saharan Africa. Good morning and a warm welcome to today's podcast recording. If I can start off by asking you my first question. A core part of your project involves co-developing sustainable land management interventions with local communities. Tell us how this approach differs from traditional, more top-down land restoration programs.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast to share my experience and thoughts, Paul. The first thing is the top-down approach assumes project leaders know what is best to the community, to the people, and needed by the community of farmers. So such approach may contribute to a certain extent, to sometimes to higher, sometimes a lower extent, to tackle the problem of land management. However, one important thing is such approach will not allow for local adaptation. So in many cases, the efforts, the interventions are not aligned with the needs and priorities of the farmers. So consequently, it will lead to a situation where it's not going to be long-lasting or sustainable, because it's not going to help the follow-up activities in terms of proper management and maintenance. So the sustainability will fall really under question. The core idea, however, in co-developing sustainable management with the community is to listen to them, to learn from them through increasing involvement of the people at all levels. We are going to increase their engagement in the different stages of sustainable land management. This will help definitely to identify the real problem and the right solution to the problem. So at the end of the day, it is going to create ownership and commitment. Our project involved the community and, of course, the most important stakeholders that are working with the community, particularly in land degradation issues. For example, in one of our works in identifying land restoration options, we sought active participation of the farmers and institutions involved in these restoration activities. This allows us to identify interventions which are locally adaptable and, of course, relevant to the situation in a particular area where we are working. So in the process of land management practices, which we are focusing and answering the community priorities, we need and we have been co-developing our work. So in the process, we also learn from the community. We are working with the community in the planning as well as in the implementation stage.
Tell us, what are the most pressing soil health issues that you are currently seeing in the Rift Valley?
All different soil health issues are observed in the area, such as erosion, nutrient depletion, and others as well. To describe some about the area of our project, Halaba, which is the project area, is characterized by severe land degradation. Land degradation has been a persistent challenge in the area, mainly marked by gully erosion, threatening farmers' livelihood, and as well as the landscape sustainability. As I said, the critical problem in the project area is erosion, particularly gully erosion, and you will find gullies everywhere, dissecting the lands, gullies resulting agricultural land to be abandoned. Ditches are created towards large gullies. Roads are broken, culverts, bridges, and so on. All these problems have been observed in the area. People in the area also suffering from such gully erosion in many ways. They are losing their land. They're traveling and going across the farms, becoming difficult. And also, in some extent, it is being danger to their animals and children. So we are engaged in restoration activity of these lands through mainly using soil, stone, and wood barriers, and as well as planting vegetation in the gully floors. So we are controlling the runoff, which is entering into the gully from the surrounding catchment. And also we are involved in another intervention, which we call it exclosure, in order to rehabilitate degraded abandoned lands.
Can you tell me that word again? Did you say exposure? Can you define that? Because that's not a word I've heard before.
It's a natural way of allowing land to recover by itself by excluding interference of man or human and animals. Of course, this natural regeneration can be enhanced through some other additional inputs or interventions which human can do in terms of soil and water conservation activities.
Okay, that is fascinating. Now, your work integrates what we could call old knowledge, and you integrate that with modern science. Could you give us an example of an indigenous land practice that has informed your current professional work?
In Smile, we have an interesting story. We have learned from the community. In one of our outreach exercise, which has been focusing on awareness creation of best practices, which was actually done in one of our project Avalis. It was a gully rehabilitation work that has been done by a family. This remarkable successful story from one of the project Kabbalists, which was driven by one family, has been taken as a very good example for us and lesson to outscale to other areas. Here goes. The family head, Sheikh Mohammed, and his family members embarked in an interesting, ambitious work to rehabilitate a large gully close to their homeland, or to their home state. They were determined, and of course, they were working very hard to make a difference and becoming an example to their fellow farmers. The rehabilitation process started with the construction of series of cross pumps using local materials from the surrounding, and these cross bunds have been installed along the gully floor. These bunds have proved to be effective in stopping soil erosion and capturing runoff.
And tell me, sorry, let me just stop you. When you talk, did you say cross bands?
Yes, bund.
And can you define that again, if you could just define?
Embankments that are constructed using local materials, such like stone, soil, sacks filled with soil, or wooden materials. All these are possible ways, or a combination of these are made an embankment which are set across the floor as a barrier. So these barriers actually will deter any flow that's going along the slope of the floor of the gullies. So that will stop there, deposit the soil material, and only the slow runoff is going to overtop and flow to the next state. These are actually very similar of a check down, right? The simple check downs.
If we call this old knowledge, how long has this method been traditionally used?
It is a practice for a long time. Of course, the issue is there is no such a big innovation in terms of specific techniques in soil and water conservation. The main issue is to adapt it to the situation where the social, economic, and physical circumstances allow. So they are adapting it to their own situation by making it relatively affordable within their level capacity and really fit to the biophysical situation of the farmers. So these farmers have installed this barrier. In addition to that, they have planted bamboo, right, on the gully floor. So the bamboo roots hold the soil, making it resistant to erosion. In addition to this, it's very much interesting that the bamboos are becoming an income source, reliable income source for the family, because bamboos are in a high demand in the area, especially for the construction of house roofs, which is showing the economical and environmental value of such interventions. So this endeavor demonstrated actually to the community two things, very important two things. One is the power of the local or the community resourcefulness.
Yeah.
And the second one is how the commitment of one family can make a great difference that can be exemplary to others, right? So this situation actually has given us really interest, and we captured this initiative as an excellent example for gully erosion control and rehabilitation. So it becomes a replicable model for other Kabbalists in our project area, as well as communities facing similar problem elsewhere.
So that's really helpful. And if we just talk about the bamboo for a moment, you talk about it using for roof construction. Can you just explain the way in which bamboo is used in that for that purpose?
The bamboo, the stalk, as well as the leaves are separately being used. Mainly the stem or the stalk is riprap on the roof, because most farmers in Ethiopia are using grass-thatched roof, and grass is not really readily available as it has been before, because most grasslands are being utilized as a farmland as farming or cultivation is increasing. So you see, we picked this story, we picked this experience, and based on this learning, we have extended the same practice to all our project Abalays by organizing 10 groups in each project Abalay with 10 members, only to rehabilitate each group 150 meters length. Really a relatively small length. But when that is added up, it is going to give us about 1.5 kilometer of gully lengths in each Kabbalah. So in 8 Kabbalists, we were able to achieve about 12 kilometers of gullies being rehabilitated in the same manner. And of course, some modification have been taken with discussion with the community, the farmers. Some are preferring fodder crops, right? Grasses rather than bamboo. So as their preference, we allow them whichever grass or vegetation to plant within the gully floor, as well as around the catchment of these gully lengths.
This leads to a very, very particular question from me. You've clearly been monitoring a very successful project. Tell us how the soil stewardship practices that you've described might offer lessons for land managers in the UK and elsewhere.
Well, this is really very much interesting. With a lot of differences, technology as well as in the capacity. However, I believe there are some most important issues to consider here as a lesson. One is the participatory approach. This is important in implementing interventions. Following this approach, which is actually creating ownership by the community, so their sustainability is guaranteed. The second one is the issue of low-cost nature of these interventions or practices. The community-led and owned interventions are within their capacity, definitely, and this has led to make it relatively low cost, so economically visible, as well as worth replicating elsewhere. The third issue is the community, our farmers' approach are relevant and holistic by their nature, because people or the community, the farmers, has the nature to include all aspects of the landscape, the livelihood, their social settings. So integrating the different aspects of the sustainable management, which could prove successful implementation and, of course, outscaling.
Thank you. And tell me also, how do you ensure that communities have ownership of the soil and land management solutions that you've been introducing? And tell us also about what you've learned about basically how you can create these projects together.
You really brought an interesting issue, which we are greatly challenged, because the ownership issue is not directly and only related to the community, but it is also related to those institutions that are responsible or have the mandate to organize the community and to work with the community in sustainable land management. Well, of course, one of the big challenges in all developmental activities, particularly in sustainable land management, is lack of ownership. This is equally important for a project like SMILE. This is both in the community, as I said, as well as institution involved that are the stakeholders. So we have faced ownership problem mainly from the institutions. It has been observed that the institutions are taking the project as a separate entity, operating for its own goal, not as part of the support of the activities of, say, one of the greatest institutions that we are working with is the Agricultural Office. So this weekend's effective and coordinated work between the project and the major organization that I've said, the Agricultural Office. This is, there is no standard procedure established for the integration from the authorities as well. So the project and the organization are not actually have been brought together with a certain enforced law. That was really a challenge. So what we did in our part in order to overcome this problem is we developed and have made collaboration formal through signing, say, memorandum of understanding with them. We also regularly created a meeting. So a regular meeting and evaluation, discussion, what is best way to approach, and so on, has been used as one key element. Another challenge with our ownership issue is limited institutional coordination. We are working with multiple institutions, and we have observed that there is limited coordination between the different institutions we are working with. The major reasons are there are some issues of competition in terms of objective, in terms of mandate, and also there is lack of communication in our observation. So what we have tried to do is at the early stage we did a stakeholder analysis. We tried to improve participation and engagement. The stakeholder analysis has enabled us to understand the interest, the influence, the power, and coordination as well. So each stakeholder has been identified in these all ways, and better engagement has been attempted. The third issue is the issue of the top-down approaches in some of the activities. I have explained the first question about this issue, and whenever we have the approach of top-down, or the top-down approach is used in the community, when we say we know for you, the problem starts. So the key issue here is participation, right? Participation at all levels. Participation to the level of empowerment, to ascertain the right to say no, right? The right to say that is the level where we can achieve real participation. So when communities participate from the beginning, that is problem identification and prioritization. It is a way to embed the issue as their own and create interest, and of course, own whatever is going on. So communities and implementing organizations will take the lead to develop the solution to their problems. Another lesson in co-creation is the consultative meeting, which is actually an approach for us, an approach to the implementing organization. We call it a consultative meeting. It is a regular meeting in order to consult them at the beginning by describing the project idea, what it is, and getting feedback. Then to co-design and divide the responsibilities between the project and the implementing organization. Then implementation follows. Then we put ourselves a bit aside and will become a facilitator so that the project is going to be owned by the institutions and the community.
Thank you. Now, there's a long-standing relationship between Hawassa University and the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. How has this scientific collaboration strengthened the project, particularly around the topic of soil monitoring and knowledge exchange?
The story of our collaboration goes back to 2013, where we have started the first project, which we call it ALTER, which is Alternative Carbon Investment and Ecosystem for Poverty Elevation. Since then, other projects, what we call it IPOR, BRAID, Relantier, have been implemented in this area. And now the active two projects are SMILE and Crossroad. Of course, SMILE has been developed or exploited based on the previous project findings. The previous projects mainly focused on research and evidence generation, while SMILE is focusing more to see the need of the community, their engagement, and implementing practical solutions to the problem of the region in terms of soil degradation. Our focus is more on developmental activities. So the lessons that we got from previous projects are being used as a basis for us in order to develop and bring about the SMILE project work towards more benefiting, more community oriented. So SMILE is mainly focusing on implementing land degradation interventions, such like gully rehabilitation through community, job creation through beekeeping and gut fattening, working with schools, school children in order to raise community awareness in soil and restoration activities. So the work is producing a series of storylines from local people on their experience with implementing measures. We also produced technical briefs, technical reports. So all these are capacities partly which has been developed from the previous projects.
What indicators, and here I'm talking about soil, ecological or socio-economic indicators, what indicators are you using to track the project's impact, and tell us about some of the early changes that you're now seeing on the ground?
Yeah, indicators are very key in order to evaluate where we start and where we ended up. And of course, focusing on the main issues, outcomes that we actually expect from the project. In this project, we have surveys, the baseline and inline surveys. The baseline and inline surveys include many of the factors that are expected to change through the project period, which are social, economic, and biophysical characteristics. Moreover, we have also thought that there will be some changes behaviorally as well as a result of the project implementation in the area. So the project focus, as I said, is intervention to reduce land degradation, and thus rehabilitation efforts are undertaken. So that are specifically one of our good indicators, such as area rehabilitated in the landscape, farm fields that are treated by different soil and water conservation practices. Another intervention is from this project, job creation, which we have planned to benefit 100 youth and women. So currently, all the startup businesses are well functioning, and we're still looking at and monitoring how far these are going on very well. The other activity, specific activity, and the impact and indicator is going to be evaluated is capacity building activities. These are material supports as well as trainings. The material support and trainings are successfully accomplished, and in order to enable them to effectively enhance the activities through this capacity building. So one way of measuring this is feedback that we are getting from the people that are directly involved and receiving these supports, as well as institutions that are benefiting out of this. Overall, with the baseline survey and inline survey, as the project final goal is bringing improvement in the community livelihood, the indicators of livelihood improvement are included in the baseline and inline surveys. So far, I would say we have observed and got feedback as early change. One is awareness and active participation. That is a very an important feedback we got, which is the participation and cooperation we got from the community. Our relationship is highly improved compared to the start, greater responsiveness that we see from the community than the start of the project. The second one is the believing on our activities. That is, we see their commitments in any activity that is going on. The third one is what we have observed, initiatives to scale up our work. Our work in nurseries, schools, rehabilitation of gullies, more works have been done, and that our work actually implemented in the area. So we are seeing their initiative. As they learn from this project, they are becoming more interested and putting their the annual plan in order to do similar activities as we are doing in the project area.
Thank you. Now, you've touched on this, but let me just ask you in conclusion, generally, what broader opportunities do you see for scaling up community-driven, Indigenous informed soil management approaches, not just across Africa, but globally? What would you say in conclusion that is the way forward here?
SMILE project is one of the 21 projects funded by the RADA, Reducing Environmental Degradation in Asia and Africa, which is in the first call. The countries are located in Africa and Asia. There are different forums to communicate with the projects that allows us to share our experiences through news, social media, webinar, online meetings. All these have given an opportunity in order to share what we have done and what experiences we got out of our projects. So this sharing of experiences and creating possible networks have facilitated in order to inform others about what we did. So that is an interesting opportunity for others to know about what we are doing. Of course, we are also learning from the others. The second one is publications. The project developed reports, journal articles, policy briefs, technical papers, storylines, and etc. And these products actually are reaching and being shared to the project members and other members and to the wider audience globally. All these, I believe, will create opportunity to inform others involved in similar endeavors. So in the context of climate resilience, of course, our effort, I hope, will contribute to protecting ecosystems, contributing also to improving soil health and conserving water. So supporting communities to adapt to climate shocks as well.
And in conclusion, if our listeners are keen to find out more about the project, where's the best place to get more information?
The RADA website also is describing about each project which is being funded by that program. So our program also is listed and briefly describe what we are doing in terms of the activities so far that has been done.
We'll put a link on the BSSS podcast page on the BSSS website so that people can follow that up. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. And can I thank everyone for listening to this episode of Soil Matters. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do so on Spotify, Acast, and also Apple Podcasts to make sure that you hear the next episode as soon as it's uploaded. If you'd like to follow up any of the topics that we've discussed today, go to the podcast pages of the BSSS website. And to learn more about the two journals or to become a member, again, go to the British Society of Soil Science website, which is soils.org.uk. Thank you, and thank you very much for listening.
Hi, my name is Professor Jack Hannam, and I'm a soil scientist, and I'm past president of the British Society of Soil Science. Did you know the health of our soil affects everything? Our food, our climate, our health, and our future. Formed in 1947, the British Society of Soil Science is a professional membership body dedicated to protecting, improving, and discovering new knowledge about the foundation of our planet, soil. From developing cutting-edge research, engaging with international and domestic governments through science-led policy and advocacy, to publishing in leading sector journals and accessing extensive educational resources, our members are given the tools to be at the forefront of shaping a sustainable future. Our members are central to making a real impact and facilitating lasting change. Through access to our extensive networks, they could connect with experts and drive the conversation on soil health worldwide. Join a passionate community committed to tackling the future generational climate, biodiversity and food security challenges. Don't wait, get involved today, because soil is where it all begins, and soil matters now more than ever. Find out more at soils.org.uk.